Field Jaguar, Tony Boselli.
Tony Boselli.
If you face this man on the
home of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
If you face this man on the offensive line, you knew he was destined for Canton. One of the most dominant tackles of the 1990s and the first ever Jacksonville Jaguar, Tony Boselli.
In the hell, they were going to let Fred be the first Jaguar.
Welcome back. It's Jaguars Happy Hour. That was Bruce Smith introducing Tony Boselli into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or the announcement that he had been elected on NFL honors. Welcome back. It's Jaguars Happy Hour. JP Shadrick, Jeff Lageman. Well, that was, of course, a few months ago, right around Super Bowl time. Then there was earlier this week on Bruce Smith's Instagram
Don't allow
page,
any points to
a long
drive.
string of
His
issues
stick.
with Boselli, apparently, in part saying a large part of the campaign to promote Tony Boselli into the Hall of Fame seems to hyper-focus on a single successful performance he had against me in a 1996 playoff game. He later went on to say, I and other Hall of Famers believe it sets a horrible precedent to negatively zero in on a standing member of the Hall's play in order to validate the candidacy of a nominee. He said much more. We'll get to it coming up. Pete Prisco of CBS Sports might have a few things to say about this as well. Good afternoon to you, Pete. What's up?
What's up, JP? You know, look,
Pete Prisco.
It's nice to see Bruce saying those things because we got to knock Boselli down a few pegs before the ceremony, don't we? Nah, I'm kidding. But, I mean,
Pete,
you know,
don't give it to
JP, all we ever talk about is how giant his head is. Well, that thing is going to be out of control in the next 2 months. So, I mean, you know, bringing him down a little bit is not a bad thing, right?
That's not what I was expecting to hear, but yeah, I guess.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And look, I just don't understand where Bruce is coming from and why now? Why all of a sudden do you pop that out there and say that? And it just isn't a good look for him. This is an exclusive club, and welcome to the club, everybody. And oh, by the way, I'm going to take a shot at the guy who's now coming into the club. It just Bruce Smith looks terrible with the way he handled this thing, and I think that's getting a lot of pushback, and he's getting a lot of pushback, which is the way it should be.
Pete, and the other thing I think that's disappointing is that he makes a statement, but then in that statement, he uses the line, and I'm going to read this because I think this is important. He says, I and other Hall of Famers. He uses that as if there's other Hall of Famers that believe the same as him.
If I was Tony, I'd be like, who in here co-signing Bruce Smith? Because we all finna fight.
That's not okay to say, well, you know, I got some other guys that are in the Hall of Fame that don't appreciate what's happening here. Don't do that.
At all.
Because
name names, Bruce.
Name names. Don't put some names on it, homie.
Their own thoughts to their own name. You don't just drag a couple more guys in anonymously to help make your point. I mean, I just think that was just chicken, you know what.
You know who one of those guys is, and because I've actually talked to him over the years, and I've argued with him, and one of those guys that never thought Tony was that good was John Randall. And the reason being, you remember the game up there live. Well, you were on the team that year, right? That was the year Jonathan Quinn. Well, you were still there, weren't you?
What year was that?
What year was that? When Jonathan Quinn had to play quarterback at Minnesota on a Monday night? Maybe you weren't on the team that year.
I don't know.
But it was Jonathan Quinn was the third team quarterback, and he had to start the game. And the Vikings were one of the better teams in the league that year, and they went up there and got ambushed.
Oh, John Randall, the one who used to wear the face paint.
And Tony will be the first to admit. He says it now to this day. I didn't play well against Randall. And John Randall will sit there and say, oh, Tony wasn't a good player. And I go, John, you can't say that off of one game. Give me a break. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so that's probably the other guy that Bruce is talking about. But
let John Randall speak his mind. I mean, don't
right.
Don't say that.
I agree. I just don't understand what was the reasoning for it. It's not just one game. By the way, he played him again and handled him in the next time they played too. Remember that? People don't realize that. He dominated him again in the second time he played him. So I think it's a bad look for Bruce Smith.
It's a really bad look. And Pete, when you look at the comments on Bruce's Instagram page, I thought that the people did a great job responding to some of Bruce's comments. And some of them. He
didn't realize Jacksonville was going to get in his ass like that.
I had to get it off my chest. The very first segment of our show here. and I said this, was the best one, and the line was that Tony Boselli is living in Bruce Smith's head for over 20 years rent-free. That's the truth.
It is true. And I'll be honest with you, over the years, I've tried to get stuff out of him to help Tony's cause, and he would never do it.
No.
He would never do it. Never would. And he never shook his hand after the game either. I mean, he just got abused and then ran for the high hill.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, though. I mean, look, there's a lot of guys that haven't shaken hands after a game because, there's anger or disappointment and everything else. But,
Yeah, but okay, that's still that. Go shake a hand. I mean, okay, he didn't shake his hand, but then this is going on for 15 years. He never wanted to say anything. Every time I did, I go to Vic Caruccio. I've known for years. I go, Vic, Bruce Smith. Can you get him to say something about Tony so we can put it in the packet for the Hall of Fame thing? And he would never do it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a. And by the way, I told Tony the other day, I go, Tony, all you had to do was respond. Just say 3 words. Watch the tape. That's all anybody has to do is watch the tape. He abused the guy.
Pete Prisco, CBS Sports senior writer, is with us. There are a couple more quotes we'll get to if you're watching on Jaguars.com. The Hall of Fame is an exclusive fraternity that follows a tacit code of conduct which fosters respect and brotherhood between its members. He later went on to say, resorting to underhanded tactics like targeting a Hall of Famer and hyping a one-game matchup to bolster a nominee's merit, as some of Tony's supporters have done, undermines the integrity of the Hall's election process. There's plenty more than that. That's all we'll get to here. But, Pete, what happened to the respect and brotherhood and the tacit code of conduct?
So you're going to have to see me when you get in there.
That's the most amazing thing about that, because there's been guys in the Hall of Fame that didn't get along. They never got along. And yet when they get into the Hall of Fame together, they're brotherhood. It's a brotherhood. You put the jacket on, you're part of the brotherhood. You sign your name, HOF.
Oh, that was a good play.
Money. Brag
block,
every brag on
what do you call it? Cross, crack, block, or something like that.
And what happens? He's not even in yet, and he's taking shots at him. Right. I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. And I think they have talked, and I think they'll fix it, but that was...
Should light him up again.
I would have a hard time talking with Bruce if I'm Tony. And I may talk and make it look good,
fullback, let's go.
Value, but I mean, if I'm Tony,
well, now you know what he really thinks.
I'm never going to forget that.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't forget that. Just like you don't forget how you dominated them. You don't. There's some things that will never be forgotten.
No, you know what Tony should have said, Logs? He should have said, you know what, Bruce, you were the defensive player that year, and you're about number 4 on my list of guys if I had to rank them in terms of gave me the most trouble. Because Mike McCrary was number 1.
Oh, absolutely. Tony said that for years.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird. And then anybody who says, "Oh, it was one game," well, he did dominate him again at the second time he played him too. By the way, just FYI. I think that was the next year.
And Bruce thinking that he's the only guy that Tony dominated. I mean, Pete, you remember the very first game that Tony played? And you remember it was against the Green Bay Packers and Sean Jones.
Sean Jones.
He crushed him. Jason Taylor dominated him.
The best one is the Derek Thomas one, though. When Derek Thomas, I think, had 7 sacks the week before he played you guys. And Phil Sims always tells the story. Sims was at the pre-production meeting and he says, "Hey, Tom, how are you going to handle Derek Thomas?" And he goes, "My guy." And he stoned him. He didn't get near him. He dominated him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he dominated a bunch of really good players. And you look, you practice against him every day.
Great players.
You know what he could do.
I know. I've never been around somebody that out of the gate gave me fits as a veteran. Never. There's never been a rookie that I went against that I was like, "Jeez, you kidding me?" I didn't have an answer. The only one that I think that I would even compare to Tony was John Ogden. Like right out of the gate, he was great. Long. I mean, obviously he was playing guard that very first time, but then the first time that he played a tackle went against him, and it was one of those things where you didn't know what was going to work. And with Tony, it was the same way in practice. He was like, "God, I don't know what to do." You didn't have anything that you felt good about that you could beat him with. And then the intensity that he played with and the finish that he played with was so far above. And it's so disappointing that Bruce would mention a Will Wolford or a Richmond Webb or a Bruce Armstrong along the same lines of Boselli. I mean, Pete, you watch those guys. I played against those guys. That's not the same category.
No, they're not. Look, Tony's in the category with Ogden and Walter Jones and Anthony Munoz and he's better than Pace. He was better than Pace and Pace. He's better than Willie Rofe, and they both went in before him.
Yes.
He's in the category of the elite. The other thing, too, like, he's a left-handed quarterback, wasn't protecting the backside. Well, Anthony Munoz blocked for Boomer Esiason. He didn't protect the backside either. I mean, it's ridiculous. And by the way, the blocking schemes were entirely different back then. Those guys were in man-up, one-on-one situations when they were in pass protection. They didn't get a lot of help, including in that playoff game. There wasn't a lot of help for Tony in that playoff game. Well, it's entirely different. Balls out now too. It wasn't 7-step drops like it is back then.
Yeah, they didn't give Tony any help. I mean, and whether you had a left-handed quarterback or not, you were facing the most athletic, best pass rusher of every team.
I was going to say, it's still Bruce Smith lining up against you. Why is he on that side then, Bruce? Why aren't you on the other side?
Well, Bruce, Bruce is saying that maybe that if Tony had gone against Phil Hansen, maybe it would have been tougher for Mark Brunell. I mean, come on.
By the way, he did get he got a half sack the next time they played. And I went back and actually rewatched that game. He got it on the guard. He slanted inside on the guard, and the guard didn't block him. So he didn't get it on Tony either.
There you go. Well, that's Pete Prisco.
It's just a shame that, look, Bruce Smith is a great player. Great player. I mean, arguably one of the top 10 defensive players ever to play the game with longevity, performance, the height of his level of play. And to do this, it's just a bad look. It's a bad look, and I think it causes some concern. In my eyes, is he okay? Is Bruce okay?
They're trying to say, now they say you got CTE. CTE's acting up.
I mean, because you know what? This is not something that happens every day coming from a Hall of Famer's mouth. Is he okay? Because this isn't something that somebody that's okay would say.
And what was the impetus for it? Did somebody ask him about it, or he just put it on his Instagram?
No, he put it on his Instagram.
Put it on the IG.
I mean, this is totally prepared. I mean, reviewed, multiple pages on Instagram. Pete, this isn't something that's a knee-jerk reaction to anything. This is something that he thought out, or somebody helped him create, or what. I mean, I don't know, but I can tell you this, man. He's salty about it.
Pete Prisco, CBS Sports senior writer, with us. While we have you.